In today's video, we're talking about how you can create an anti-hero character in your manga, comic, or light novel. So first of all, what is an anti-hero character? An anti-hero is a character with morally good goals who does not match the usual heroic archetype that you would typically see in protagonists or other heroic characters. This means that while they may take heroic actions, they will not be the type of character who is shown to be a hero on the surface. They are someone who will do what is right, what needs to be done, even if it means doing the difficult things that no one else wants to do. Anti-hero characters can be in a wide variety of series, and it's a character type that can really add a lot of suspense to your story. They are typically used as characters who can help to drive the story and motivate the other characters in it, because while there may be a protagonist and other characters who are willing to go towards the goals, the anti-hero as a character is someone who is very driven, and they are determined to do what needs to be done, even if it means that others may hate them for it. So what is the difference between an anti-hero and a villain? While an anti-hero and a villain may seem similar, they are actually quite different. So first of all, let's look at the anti-hero character type. An anti-hero will do the right thing, even if it is difficult or others may hate them for it. They have morally good goals, but they may not appear like a hero on the surface. An anti-hero is someone who is very much willing to do the difficult thing when it really matters the most. When things are difficult in the current moments of your story and all of the characters are frustrated or stressed, the anti-hero character will be the one who will step forward and take charge when none of the other characters are willing to do so. So next, let's take a look at the villain character type. A villain will have morally bad goals and will typically have evil intentions for the other characters in the story. While an anti-hero and villain may look similar on the surface, they have very different intentions and purpose in the story. Now you might be wondering, can an anti-hero be an antagonist? Well, they can. It's important to keep in mind that the antagonist is not the same as the villain, though they can be. You see, the antagonist is the main obstacle in the story, preventing the protagonist from reaching their goal. So the antagonist can not only be a character, but it can be a thing, it can be a situation, it can be an event. The antagonist is simply the obstacle that is stopping the protagonist from reaching the main goals of the story. So the antagonist does not necessarily need to be a bad character. So in this instance, yes, the anti-hero can be the antagonist in the story. And in fact, there are many anti-hero characters that do appear to be the antagonist of the story, at least in the beginning stages of it. So when it comes to creating a good anti-hero character, the main thing you want to do is you want to give them a good backstory. An anti-hero is a very emotionally driven character, so their backstory is especially important. They are someone whose backstory drives them to make the decisions that they are making in the current moments of your book. So know the experiences that they went through in their past and understand how these events shaped them into the character they are in the current moments of your book. Their backstory does not necessarily need to be difficult or hard for them, but the backstory does directly affect their motivation. So when you are creating their backstory, while it does not need to be a difficult or traumatic backstory, their backstory is what affects their main motivations and goals. So you really do need to understand their backstory and the events that shape them, but you also need to understand what their goal is in the main points of the story. Both of these really influence each other, their goal and the motivation behind the goal, and the motivation is almost always created from the backstory. So understand their backstory and the events they went through and how this caused them to form the current goal of the story. So what is the motivation? The motivation is the drive towards achieving their goal. This motivation is typically formed, or almost always formed, from the backstory. So here's an example of how the backstory can affect your character's motivation. The anti-hero had an important item stolen from them in their backstory. This caused them to be afraid of thieves. In the current moments of the story, there is a prevalent thief who is stealing from people in the city. The anti-hero decides to track down the thief and stop them for good. The backstory shows why the anti-hero thinks the way they do, their thought process behind their actions, and this can help you to find the motivation behind their choices. So, as well as the motivation, as I mentioned before, it's also important to know their goal. The anti-hero's goal will be one of the main driving points of their story. If they are the protagonist, this goal will be the main goal of the story. If not, their goal will typically align with the main story goal, align with the protagonist's goal. So here's an example of how the anti-hero's goal can align with the protagonist's goal. The protagonist wants to capture the villain and save the world. The anti-hero wants to defeat the villain because they believe that they should not have a chance to escape. Both of these goals align with each other, but the anti-hero has a more direct approach and maybe not quite as compassionate as the hero's goal would be. So as well as understanding your anti-hero character's backstory, their motivation, and their main goals, it's also very important to understand how their actions and how other characters may influence the anti-hero character. Typically, when an anti-hero character is presented in the story, they will almost always have a foil character with them. So, when you're creating your anti-hero character, I also recommend you create a foil. A foil is a character that reflects and highlights the attributes that the other character lacks. So typically, the protagonist and the anti-hero, usually the deuteragonist, will be foils of each other. But it doesn't always have to be the anti-hero and the protagonist, it could be the anti-hero character and a different character in the story, as long as these characters both help to reflect and highlight the traits that the other character lacks. For example, if the protagonist is optimistic and friendly, the anti-hero will typically be the opposite, pessimistic and mean. Take a look at your favorite anti-hero characters and see if you can find the foil for this anti-hero character in various settings and stories. Now, as mentioned before, the anti-hero character is someone who is very emotionally driven. The events that they experience in their backstory will likely drive them to make the choices in the current moments of the book. So, therefore, when we're looking at the anti-hero character, we also want to understand their internal and external conflict. Almost every character has a strong external conflict, but the anti-hero characters in particular have a strong internal conflict. So what is the external and internal conflict? The external conflicts are conflicts outside of your character, so fights, enemies, or external obstacles, basically any danger or threat that is outside of your character. The internal conflicts are the battles within your character's mind, so their fears, doubts, and paranoia. Throughout the story, your anti-hero character will likely face various situations where they are forced to reflect on themselves or forced to make a tough decision when their internal conflict is trying to hold them back. Despite their tough facade on the surface, they may be truly scared of the situation that they are putting themselves in, but they will do what needs to be done if they believe it will help them to achieve their goal, despite their fears or doubts or paranoia that they may experience under the surface. Now, it's also very important to show this character's will. How far would your anti-hero go to achieve their goals? This is why their motivation is so important to consider, because their goal should feel like a matter of life or death to your anti-hero character, and failure is not an option. Throughout your story, show this determination through your character's actions. Reveal to your audience just how far your anti-hero would go to achieve what they want, no matter what difficult things your character may need to do or who may hate them for it. Your character needs to have a goal that is so important that they will keep getting up no matter how many times they may fail. This is their willpower shown in action. Your anti-hero needs to have a strong enough willpower to keep going no matter how difficult things may seem, because they are determined and certain that they will be able to reach their goal no matter what they may need to face in the process. Now, you also want to reveal the anti-hero's true nature through foreshadowing. An anti-hero can be deceptive as a character, and when they are first revealed, they can sometimes appear to be a villain, only to later be shown to be the hero who has been trying to help the others from the shadows the whole time. While the anti-hero doesn't need to appear like a villain, they do at the very least need to appear untrustworthy at first. So slowly reveal their true personality through foreshadowing until you present their true nature on the surface for all of the characters in your story to see. In this as well, because the anti-hero appears suspenseful at first, you want to build suspense through this character's design. An anti-hero can help to build suspense in the story, therefore their design should be used to deceive the audience, to make them think that they may be a villain rather than a hidden ally. An anti-hero is someone who works from the shadows, and their design will typically reflect this. Now, this doesn't mean that their design needs to be dark or scary, but it does need to be practical, and it needs to help them to be stealthy. They are driven characters with purpose, so their outfit needs to help them to achieve their goals. Now, we've talked about the components of an anti-hero character. We've talked about their motivations and goals, how driven they are to achieve them, and the things that they may face along the way. However, what happens when the anti-hero does inevitably reach a breaking point? Well, when the anti-hero reaches a point where they have failed too many times, they usually snap. The anti-hero typically works alone to achieve their goals no matter what. However, this eventually leads them to a mental snap, where your character has failed too many times and is unable to continue. First of all, consider what events need to occur for your anti-hero character to reach this breaking point, and then show how they act once they have snapped. Do they lash out at the other characters around them, or do they retreat into themselves, into their own mind? It is important to note that the snap does not need to be the final point in your anti-hero character's story. It is only the most difficult part in their character journey. Once they have faced this difficult obstacle, usually this is where their true nature is finally revealed to the other characters around them. The other characters realize that the anti-hero character was not such a villain or so untrustworthy all this time, and they then are able to help the anti-hero character through this challenging situation. The anti-hero character is then revealed to be someone who is more of a vulnerable character, someone who has experienced difficult things and felt like they had to face these challenges alone, but only when they are experienced with this situation, when they are faced with this challenge that they are unable to overcome alone, they learn that they need to trust the other characters around them, and in turn, the other characters learn that they can trust the anti-hero character too. So this is typically shown in the anti-hero character's character development. So let's take a look at the stages of the development that an anti-hero character will typically go through in a story. You have the beginning, which is where they start off as someone kind and trusting, only for this trust to be betrayed. They become the betrayed, and once betrayed, they lose their trust in others, beginning to focus solely on their goal. Their goal gives them purpose and forces them to keep going no matter what. They become someone who is the driven. The anti-hero character does whatever it takes to achieve this goal, no matter how many times they may fail in the process. The despair. The anti-hero character reaches a breaking point and are unsure of how to continue after they have tried and failed too many times. And this is where I mentioned they will typically come out of this stage after they meet some other characters who are able to help them. The revival. The anti-hero character's true personality is revealed that they have been trying to hide all along, and the hero/friend helps them to find the way through. The anti-hero character learns that they do not have to do everything on their own. While the anti-hero character is someone who can be misunderstood, they are typically someone who has struggled with too many things for too long. They are someone who has felt like they have needed to face the full weight of the world on their shoulders all alone. So this is why it's important to show how this character goes through their journey, and also show how they can learn to trust themselves and to trust the other characters around them more. This character is someone who truly changes with the story, someone who helps to drive the story and change the story, but someone whose story is also shaped by the other events that they have faced and the characters that they have met along the way. Thank you so much for watching my video today, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know what kind of anti-hero characters you're creating, because I would love to hear about them, and I'm sure other people would love to hear about them too. Check out my website midnightcross.com for resources, templates, and workbooks that can help you to level up your story. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!